Hello. How are all of you? Been really looking forward to doing this workshop with you guys. I know that it's not an easy time at the moment. Many of you are stuck at home. We're just about all stuck at home at the moment. Some of you are like, this is the best thing ever. I'm stuck at home by myself doing all my own projects that I've never got to do. So I know for some of you it's a bit easier than for others, and others are really struggling and missing the association and stuff like that. So I thought I'd make a little course for you guys, just for my friends. And yeah, so hopefully you enjoy it, and it's just a little bit of a colour study, a little bit about oil painting. If you don't have oil paints, that's okay. You can give it a go with acrylics as well. And even if you're not using paint, but you're using colour pencil or anything like that, some of these principles will still apply. So yeah, tune in and hopefully you can learn something and enjoy it. So I've actually been doing a course myself recently. It's a colour theory course. It's very, very interesting with a guy. He's from Australia, Robin Ely, and he's moved to America, and he's been he's an amazing artist, actually, really, really amazing realist artist. And yeah, so he's been doing a free course online, and I thought, what a great idea. So here we go. I'm going to be talking a little bit about a few of the things that I learnt from the course, a few things I've learnt just in general going along with painting, and yeah, a few things I learnt yeah, from other courses and other things I've done. So hopefully, I don't do workshops because I'm a terrible teacher. I can't string my sentences together clearly. I'm generally better at writing things than speaking. I'm not a very good words person, but hopefully I can make something make sense, and hopefully it'll just help you get started anyway. But what we'll be focusing on is obviously oil painting, and oil painting for beginners. So the first time you've used oil, and yeah, just help you get a feel for the paint and how to use oil paint. Because I know when I started, it was a complete schmozzle. I tried to paint a daisy with some oil paints, and it looked terrible, and the paint wouldn't dry, and I just didn't understand what I was doing. So we're just gonna talk a little bit about the basics in oils compared to acrylics, a little bit about color theory, and a little bit about values. So pretty much what I'm going to do now is we're just going to have a chat, and I'll have a bit of a talk about a few different things today, and then we'll get on to a little bit of painting a little bit later on, and then tomorrow we'll get started on the pair. So just to sort of get your minds in the right place and things like that, we'll just have a bit of a chat first. So I have a lot of people ask me, have you always painted? Oh my goodness, you're so talented. Where did you learn this? Pretty much it's just like anything. I don't believe that it comes down to like a personal talent or anything like that. I think some people have an eye for it, but really I think when it comes down to creating a painting, it comes down to decision making, and it's learning how to make those decisions. Will teach you basically better skills as being a painter. So I would say that when you're looking at your subject, let's say you have a still life, it's about the decisions that you make. So it's about the observation. What do you see when you look at your subject? Do you just see the shape? What are you looking at? What do you see? And it's about the way that you observe and then know where to put your brush stroke. So if you see a little bit of mustard, but the mustard looks like it has a blue tinge to it, are you just going to put a bit of mustard there, or are you going to create that depth? So the quality of your decisions about what you observe and where you put your paintbrush, I think, comes down to, or will reflect, the quality of your work. So it's about painting with intention. It's about looking at your subject and knowing what color you need to make and where you need to put it. It's important to be able to identify different shades and tones, so lighter versus darker, and how that blends in. And if you know a little bit about color, if you've learned a little bit about color, we will have a chat about that too. But if you have a color wheel, this will actually teach you a lot. So it's not just a matter of red and blue make purple or yellow and blue make green, but actually knowing how to mix these colors will actually teach you a lot. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but when you know how to mix color, it becomes easier then to make the right decisions about what color you're going to mix, where you're going to put that brush stroke. So like I said, I don't believe it's all about talent. I think a lot of it's to do with observation and decision making when it comes to art. So keep that in mind if you feel like I'm not a very arty person. I've been painting almost all my life, so I think a lot of things come down to practice. Just like someone who plays a sport, someone who bakes or cooks, no one's amazing the first time they do anything. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of observation, a lot of study, and a lot of interest in something, and then you start to pick up things, and then your decision making is sort of in line with skill. So I think that's all it really comes down to. So don't tell yourself you're not a creative person. I think anyone can do it. I think a lot of it just comes down to desire and how you apply yourself. What else are we going to talk about? Oh, so language. So I'm going to be using some words like value and temperature, and I'll explain those so that you know as we go through the course what I'm talking about. So when I talk about value, I'm talking about shading. So high value means a light, just light coloured light. A low value means dark. If you have a look at this here, it's a little painting I did recently. Oh, it's a bit hard to see the shades in the camera, but this is a light value painting. So you've got your darker value here, or your lower value here, and your lighter value here. And here you've got the same, you've got your darker value or your lower value here, and your lighter, higher value here. So these paintings are quite interesting to have a look at. What I've got here is I've got a 5 scale chart. So that's white, that's medium grey. It's probably a bit hard to see on the phone, but it's medium grey, and then that there is black. So you've got, when you mix your white and your medium grey together, you get this colour here, sort of a lighter grey. When you mix your medium grey and your black together, you get a really dark grey. So that's what I'm going to be talking with you about today, about value and about shading. It's really important to know how to do shading and how to work with your values, because it's what provides depth. Colour will do that as well, but I'd say 80% of your painting is going to be making sure you get your values right. So we'll talk about that a bit later today, and we'll do a value study together. What else was I going to have a chat to you about? Oh, temperature. So when we talk about temperature, we're talking about warm or cold. So if something has a warmer temperature, you're looking at more like reds, I'd say deep oranges, yellows. That's a warmer temperature. A cooler temperature would be blue. So I'd say that would be the coolest temperature. So if you want a cooler temperature, greens, blues, that sort of deal. So those are words we're going to be using throughout the course. But I would say that value is by far the most important, because once you get your shading right, anything will work. And here's an example. So this is one I've done recently for my course. This is only value and no colour. And when you get your values right, the colour's very easy. The colour just comes over top, and then it's about putting the right bits of colour in the right places. But to get your shape, You can do all kinds of amazing colours in black and white, sorry, all kinds of amazing images in black and white. And the way you'll be able to tell a good painting from a not so great painting would be when you turn it to black and white. So if you're painting something and you think, something doesn't sit right about it, I'm not sure about my colours, I'm not sure about my lighting, take a photo of your painting and put it on a black and white scale, and you'll be able to see from the value of your picture whether it looks right or not. If it looks right in black and white, then you're on the right track. But if it doesn't look right when you make it black and white, you haven't got your values right. And when your values aren't right, doesn't matter what colour you put over top, it's never going to work. So this here that I've just shown you is actually just an underpainting. It's not a finished painting. We will be doing an underpainting for the pear or the still life that we'll be doing this week. And that's an exercise to get the values right. I don't always do underpaintings. I've been doing them a little bit more lately because I've been doing more portraits lately. And I find that because it's a sort of a new area for me, it helps me get the depth right, get the shape right, and then I can put the colour over top, and it brings out a bit of a different quality to your paintings, but it's not always necessary. It's not a strict rule that all artists must do underpaintings. But it certainly does help get your picture in the right place, and that's because when you get your values right, you get the lighting right and the shading right, then your whole painting comes together. So that's a little bit more about value. Let me just have a think about what else I was going to talk to you guys about. Because when you're able to look at your painting in a black and white setting, it helps you diagnose any issues that you look at and go, oh, that doesn't look quite right. So that's a really good tool to have that we have on our phones. What else am I going to talk to you guys about? Oh yes, okay. So when we start looking at values, when we start looking at the shading of our paintings, when I was younger, I was always taught that you never ever use black straight off. You always start with light. But to be honest, it's never worked for me. I've always found my pictures were oversaturated with white. They were always too light. I couldn't get the balance right. And for a long time, literally up until this year, I've never been able to put my finger on why my paintings something just off with them, you know. It's just, especially this one, of all my paintings, this one here drives me bananas because I love the concept and the colours, but something doesn't sit right with me about the image and it bothers me. And now I've given it some thought, I really understand that the values are not quite right. There's too much white. I've started with white, so I've completely flipped it, and now I start working with black. I start working with the darker colours first. Like this one here, this is all in burnt umber, but I've started with the darker colours and only added light where I really needed it. Because if you think about it, you've got a dark room, but you put a small light on, the light's going to overtake everything. The light's going to take up the darkness. You can't put darkness in to get rid of the light. You have to actually remove the light. So if you think about it that way, it works the same with painting. Start with the dark, start with the shadows. You can always add light, but you can't really take it away once it's there. So that's something to keep in mind, and I'll show you how that all works with the value study that we'll do later today anyway. So what you'll need for today, just a piece of cardboard, that'll do the job. I should probably slow down a bit and say, have you guys got any questions? But not being a live feed, I can't see what you guys are thinking. I can't have any messages from you guys. So please feel free to contact me, ask me whatever questions you like, and at 4 o'clock today we'll have a bit of a chat about the questions that you sent through. I also really want to see your work, so whether you're painting today or you're going to save these videos for a later day, that's fine, but yeah, totally send me your work. let me have a look at it. We can have a chat about it. I will be reposting some of your guys' work because I want to show others what you're doing. I don't have to put your name on it, but I really want to show some of the others what you guys are doing, and that is very possible because so many people I talk to just think, oh, it's too hard, I can't do it, I'm not creative or whatever, but it's absolutely possible. So yeah, hopefully you guys have managed to get some oil paints together. Yeah, like I said, you just need a piece of cardboard. For the time being, we're just going to play with some oil paints. So what you're going to need is, obviously, this is a very disgusting tray that I'm in the middle of using and getting rid of, and I'm going to put my glass palette together a bit later on, and I'll show you what that looks like. And yeah, it's a glass palette definitely is a lot better because all you need is a knife and you can just scrape off your paints. When it's in plastic, it just bites in and it crumbles up. You can never quite get it right. But if you're going from, we'll talk about acrylics first. So if you're going from, say, colour pencil to acrylic paints, or from watercolour to acrylic, acrylics are a really good place to start. Look, I used acrylics for 12 or 13 years, probably even longer actually, and I love them. Look, poster paints, acrylic paints, most of them are pretty good. There's not too many that aren't. I would say don't buy. Maybe chroma acryl. I don't really love chroma acryl. I find it a very thin paint, and it's just the chroma, the colour, the pigment in the paint is just not high enough. So everything you paint looks a bit streaky, but for the most part, most colours are fine. And yeah, so acrylic obviously is a water-based paint, and it means that you can put your paint on a palette or on a plate. That's the other thing I was going to say to you. If you couldn't get hold of a palette, get a plate and put a layer of tin foil over the top, and then when you're done you can just wrap up the tin foil and chuck it away and you can save your plate. So I've also been doing that for a long time because I haven't got around to making myself a glass palette, but I'm going to do it today, I promise. So yeah, so acrylic's good. It's a good place to start because look, you can change the texture with a little bit of water. You can increase it or you can decrease it. You can make your paint thinner, you can make it thicker. There's a lot you can do with acrylic paint to play with. So it's a really, really good place to start. For example, this one here is one I've done in acrylic. I purposely didn't go nuts on the blending, but to be honest, what you're going to find with acrylic paint is that they just don't blend very well. So you can see I've really purposefully there sort of made a mark where it's not blended because I kind of like it that way, but you can see here where I've tried to blend, it's just not really working. So yeah, look, the best way to blend things like that with acrylic would just be to dry blend. Don't wet your brush too much. So it's a really good place to start. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about with the underpainting and colour theory and values will all apply if you're using acrylic paint. But if you're moving from acrylics to oil, it's definitely a different story. It's not a matter of just washing your brushes out with a bit of water and then it's done. You're actually going to need some mediums. So I'll show you what I use anyway. I'll be right back. So I just get a bottle of paint cleanup from Bunnings. And oil paint, of course, is always going to be a lot harder on your brushes. Let's see, I probably go through maybe 5 or 6 brushes a month. Easy, yeah. So like, see, this happens if you don't clean it out properly, it ends up really, really stiff. It's really important that you give them a really good clean. I'm shocking for not cleaning out my brushes. I'm terrible. This is why I go through so many. But you will need to clean them out today. So if you start using oils today, you'll need to clean them today. I suggest using glass to put your paint cleanup in, just because if you put it in plastic, the plastic can melt, which is not a good idea. And how to get rid of your solvents has always been my biggest trouble with using oils. So if you live in New Zealand, I'm pretty sure you can actually just dig a hole in your garden and chuck your solvents in there. If you live in Melbourne, I'm pretty sure that's the case, or maybe not. You might have to check what the law is on that, but I actually have a big sort of like a big paint, one of those white empty paint tin things that you can get from Bunnings. I think they're about $14 each, and I put all my paint and all my solvents and all my leftovers in there, and then I bring it down to the tip. I usually have to go once every 6 months or so, but it is something I have to do as an oil painter. I've got these solvents to deal with and these extra bits of paint, and you can't just chuck them down the sink, so just beware. Okay, so oil. When you're moving to oil, what you're going to find is that blending is a breeze, because acrylic paints dry very quickly, probably within 15 minutes on your canvas. If you live in Western Australia, it's honestly more like about 3 to 5 minutes. And yes, blending's impossible. So a lot of the reason I moved to oils was actually because I moved to Perth and it was literally too hot. The air is too hot, even if you cool the house down. It's just too warm here to be able to keep up with acrylic paints. I know some people who have gone out in their backyard in 37 degrees and actually managed to complete a painting with acrylic paint. I don't know how. A lot of medium, I guess, to help it to stop drying. But yes, anyway, that's not for me. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a bit of a play with some paint. We're going to have a talk about blending. So I've just got some leftover colours from some painting I was doing the other day, and I'm just going to use those for now. So what you'll find with oil paint is that they don't dry for days and days and days. Literally, you can put them in the fridge and they'll last maybe a week. With oil paints, you don't want to get it on your clothes because it's really hard to get off, if not impossible. And the other thing with oil paints is if you use straight oil, it can take 6 months to dry, literally. So you're going to need liquid. If you haven't got liquid, you're definitely going to need linseed oil, at the very least olive oil. Olive oil, I've used it before, can take a month or so to dry. So just keep that in mind when you're painting. Liquid, I'll get that for you and I'll show you what that looks like. So here's my linseed oil. I do use that quite a lot. I use it to basically water down my colours. And it also helps the drying time. Things can dry within a week to a month with the linseed oil. But this is my go-to. I don't use it for everything. I don't use it for my top coats. I only ever use it for my undercoats. I allow my top coats to dry with the linseed oil over the span of a month, maybe even 6 weeks. But the the liquid, just within 24 hours your oil will be dry. It is the best thing in the whole world and saves you when you're on a commission and you have to get your painting done really quick. So I've learnt the value of liquid. It's this amazing thing. So anyway, get a little bit of liquid on your palette. Dip your brush into it, grab a little bit of paint and just pop it on your piece of cardboard. And then grab a darker colour. It doesn't matter what it is, just anything. Could be red, could be mustard, whatever you like. Black and white's fine too. And then do the same thing. Dip your brush in a little bit of liquid and grab that darker colour and just place it somewhere next to it on the cardboard. So what we're going to do is just going to have a bit of a play with the oil painting. Just move your brush around in circles and just get a feel for what the oil paint feels like on the other end of your brush. See how it blends, see how it moves, see what happens when your brush gets dry or when you're moving it around in the paint. And do the same with the light and then blend it into the darker colour. And then you can just see what the paint acts like, what it feels like. And then as I move my light colour into my dark, I just keep going across and we have a blend. So just start somewhere, just move across. So just get a feel for what this paint feels like to use. So give that a go. I'll let you guys have a bit of time to do that. And I'm just going to clean my brush. And have a cup of tea. Okay, I've got some paint cleanup here from yesterday because I still haven't cleaned out my brushes. I'm shocking. But to be honest, I'm in my studio every single day. I'm here every day. Probably, I try and take Sundays off. I try and have one day a week where I feel like a normal person. The rest of the time I'm in here just going, blah. I need to create stuff. So that's me, that's my life. Alright, so make sure when you wash your brushes out, give them a really good little rinse. This is where you're going to need your paper towel. And I didn't bring my paper towel, so I'm going to use this bit here. Okay, and then I'm just going to wipe my brush clean. Just make sure all the oil's out of it. You can give the brush a bit of a rub on the bottom of the glass jar. That'll help get some of the oil out. There we go. That's as clean as it's going to get, I think. Okay. So, now that you've had a bit of a play with your oil paints, you get a bit of a feel for what it's like, have a little bit of a go at blending. We're going to do a value study. So we're going to make one of these. So remember I said to you about this colour chart here. I'd like you to make one. So white, black, medium grey, and then you mix these two together and make that colour. Mix these two together and make this medium colour here. So have a go at that now. Have a go on your spare bit of cardboard and leave a bit of room because we're going to paint one of these as well. I'd suggest using a little bit of liquid or a little bit of linseed oil just to help lighten up your oils a bit. Okay, I'm going to move the camera so that you can see what I'm doing. Just bear with me. Hopefully you can see that okay. Okay, alright, so I've put white paint here. Black. So if you've got your titanium white and your lamp black, it doesn't really have to be lamp black, but every black is different. They're not the same. So just bear that in mind. Black, as you might know as well, black is every colour put together. Every single colour on the spectrum is in black. So black can be a little more red or a little more purple. All blacks are quite different, so you've got to find a black that you're comfortable using. But I just find lamp black a really standard plain black. Okay, so I've got my white paint and I've got my black paint. So I probably need a bit more white paint actually. Oh, I've got enough. I'm just going to put it on my cardboard. There we go. So the first one I'm going to mix together. I would say it would be close to 50-50, but to get a medium, black is such a strong colour, that to get a nice medium grey, you probably actually want more of a 60-40 situation. You want a little bit more white, I'd say, than black. And then you get sort of this medium grey colour here. So now we're going to mix that again with a little bit more black. Again, I would go sort of a 60-40% situation. Black is very, very strong. It does take over everything. So there we have sort of like a charcoal colour. Now you're going to want to clean your brush or wipe your brush. And then we have a light grey, lighter grey happening here. So basically here you've got your own colour chart, well, value chart, sorry, not colour chart, value chart. You've got your white, light grey, medium grey, charcoal and black. So that's just a little exercise to help you understand light to dark. If you want to try and blend those colours, we're going to put that in an exercise. So I'll go, hang on, I'll go grab another piece of cardboard.